Hi, my name is Chris Wheaton and I'm the designer of the game Widget, and today's tutorial is on how to play Widget. To play Widget you're going to need a large table, or you can even play it on the floor. You'll need a dry erase marker to write on some of the cards. Make sure it's dry erase though, because permanent marker won't come off. And finally you need a notepad and pencil for scoring. You can also use tokens like pennies or poker chips, but be careful not to use anything that anybody might choke on. Next, take the widget deck and take the 6 widget cards out of the widget decks, plus take the decider card out and set them face up in the middle of the table. Next, each player takes a widget card, whichever one they like, whichever one they want to have, and takes it and puts it face up in front of them. Any remaining widget cards, in this game for example we only have 4 players, the remaining 2 cards are just set off to the side. You don't have to worry about them for the rest of this game. Once you've done that, give the decider card to whoever is the youngest player at the table. And finally, take the rest of the cards, the rest of the deck, shuffle it up really nice, and set it right in the middle of the table where it becomes the draw pile. Once every player has a widget card, one of the players needs to deal 7 cards to each of the players in the game. Make sure your deck is shuffled before you do this, but then just deal them out face down in a normal manner. Players are free to look at the cards as they are dealt, or wait until they're all dealt and then pick them up. Once you've dealt the 7 cards and put the draw pile back in the middle of the table, you're ready to play Widget. In round 1, the goal is to build the best widget you can with the cards that you have in your hand, the 7 cards you have in your hand. Best is whatever you think is best, and more specifically, what you think other players will think is best. It could be the funniest thing you can build, the silliest, cleverest, whatever it is, longest, whatever you think is the best widget and that you think other players will think is the best widget. In order to build this widget, you do not have to use all of the cards in your hand. You can use some, 2, 3, 4, however many you need. And you may only build one new widget per round. So by now you're probably asking yourself, what does he mean when he says build a widget? So let's take a look at the cards in player 1's hand. Looking at these cards, there are actually several different widgets that player 1 could make. But this player decides that they're going to make a doohickey that shoots croutons at vampires. Player 1 builds this widget by laying down his cards face up, exactly as shown in the video, right next to his widget card, so that it says a doohickey that shoots croutons at vampires face up so that every other player can see it. Notice that the player could have added, so for example, that shoots croutons and mittens. They had the and the mittens card in their hand. They could have played them, but for whatever reason, they decided not to play those 2 cards in this particular round. You don't get any extra points for long sentences or for using all the words in your hand. So the player obviously thought this was a funnier or better or somehow more interesting widget than it would have been if he added and mittens. There are a number of different kinds of special cards in Widget. The first kind of special cards are the switch cards, noun switch, verb switch, switch anything. You can't use these cards in round 1, so I'm going to wait and explain them when we get to the later rounds. The second kind of special card is called the blank card. A blank card allows you to write in any word that you want to, any verb phrase like that balances, or any word that you want to use in the game. Make sure you only use dry erase though if you're playing with the cards, or if you're on the print and play version, make sure you use it in pencil so you can erase it. Once you've picked a word for that card, it stays that word for the rest of the game. Obviously at the end of the game you erase it, and in the next game it can be a different word, but that's the way you use blank cards. And the last special card is called the backers, and with the backers it allows you to discard the backers card and any other card in your hand currently, and draw 3 cards. That means that you will have temporarily 8 cards in your hand. If for some reason you still have 8 cards in your hand at the end of the round, you'd have to discard 1 card, so there's only 7 cards in your hand, but it does give you the option to have temporarily 8 cards in your hand. It's the only time you can do that. The last rule you need to play round 1 is the so-called verb rule. And that is, if you're unlucky enough to get a hand dealt to you that doesn't have any verbs in it, no that gives, no that shoots, no that smashes, or any other verb, then you have to discard your entire hand, face up into the discard pile right next to the draw pile, and forfeit the round. If you received a widget through Kickstarter, then you received, in addition to the game, the All-Star Monster expansion pack. That's the 16 cards you can see on the left here. If you are playing with these cards in your deck, then the no verb rule has, or the verb rule has an exception, and that is that if you draw a hand and it doesn't have any verbs in it, then you discard the hand just like before, but instead of forfeiting the turn, you actually get to draw a new hand and play as normal. So once all players have finished building the widgets, then whoever has the decider card picks one player, any player of in the game, to read and explain, if they want to, their widget. And just a quick word about this. You can read your widget. You can say, I have a doohickey that shoots croutons at vampires, and be done with it. And it's a lot more fun if you spend a little time and try and explain why this is such an important invention, such an important widget to have. So, for example, you could say, due to the recent uptick in vampire activity, I have decided to build a doohickey that shoots croutons at vampires. Of course, when somebody asks you, croutons, why do you think the croutons will help? You could say something like, well, they're garlic-flavored croutons. Well, okay, your jokes can be better than that, but that's the idea behind it, is to try and tell a little story with it to encourage players to see your widget as something real-ish. At the end of, after that, the play moves in clockwise. Everybody reads and explains their widget as much as they want to. And then at the end of that, all the players have either a point if you're using paper pencil, or token if you're using pennies or poker chips or what have you. And you get to give that to the widget that you think is the best. And again, it can be whatever you want. You can't keep that token for yourself, even if you think you have the best widget. You have to give it away, and you have to give it away to somebody else. So once all the points or tokens, if you're using tokens, have been awarded for the best widgets, then the player who is currently holding the decider card gives the decider card and any remaining cards in their hand to either the player on the left or the right, and it's the decider's choice. This is why they're called the decider. They get to decide which way the cards are going to rotate at the end of the round. And all of the players follow suit. All the other players do the same. If a player doesn't have any cards in their hand, if they've been fortunate enough to play all 7 cards that they had in their hand, then they just pretend to pass their empty hand sort of to the player, to whichever direction the decider decides things are going to go. And that's the end of the round. At the beginning of round 2, the player who now has the decider card draws to fill his or her hand. If they've got 5 cards, they draw 2. If they have 2 cards, they draw 5, so that they have no more than 7 cards in their hand. And then play proceeds clockwise, with each of the players at the table drawing to fill their hands. Players in this round can build a brand new widget, or they can add to an old widget. Players can also use the switch cards in this round, and I'll explain those in just a second. Finally, blank cards and the backer's cards are used exactly the same way as they were in round 1. It's probably a good time for another example. So player 1 already has one widget. He has a doohickey that shoots croutons at vampires. He gets 3 cards during the end of round rotation from end of round 1 rotation from another player. And then he draws 4 more to fill out his hand with 7 cards. Player 1 has a great hand, actually. He can make a new widget, he can add to his old widget, or he can do both. The only thing player 1 can't do is change the cards that he's already played. The only way you can do that is with a switch card. And again, I'll talk about that in the next slide. In round 1, you had to discard your hand if you didn't have a verb card. In round 2 and in all the remaining rounds, if you have no cards you can play, then you have to discard your hand and forfeit the round. If you have even one card that you can play, you don't have to discard your hand. If you decide you don't want to play any cards, then you do also have to discard your hand and forfeit the round. Building off his same widget card, player 1 decides to build a new widget and to add to his existing widget, leaving him with one card in his hand. Switch cards allow you to change cards in previously existing widgets. Say, for example, you have a boring noun in one of your widgets, and you have a much better noun in your hand. A noun switch card would let you make the change. Switch cards also allow you to steal cards from other players' previously existing widgets. Say you had a verb card that was pretty dull, and you saw that one of the other players had a really cool verb. You could use a verb switch card to take their cool verb and replace it with your boring verb. A switch any card allows you to switch any type of card for any other type of card. So in other words, you can do a noun for a noun or a preposition for a preposition. You can't do a noun for a preposition or a verb for a noun. Once you've played the switch card and made the switch, you just take the switch card and put it in the discard pile. Once players have played all the cards they want to play, then they will announce and explain the widgets that they've built exactly the same as they did in round 1. Likewise, just as in round 1, players will award tokens or points to whichever widget they think is best. Finally, the player with the decider card will decide which way the hands will rotate. This ends round 2. For all the remaining rounds in the game, play proceeds as in round 2. Play stops once there are no longer enough cards in the draw pile to fill everyone's hands. So even if some people can get a full 7 cards but others can't, that's when you stop play and you go to what's called the final round, where there are some special rules. Once there are no longer enough cards in the draw pile to fill everyone's hands, you have entered the final round. In the final round, the first thing you do is discard all the remaining cards in your hand. Just put them in the discard pile. And then take the discarded cards and however many cards there were left in the draw pile and shuffle them together. And then deal 7 new cards, 7 cards from this stack to each player. Each player should then take all of the cards they used to form their widget. So if they have 3 widgets, they should take all of those cards. The only card that should still be on the table should be the widget card that they originally started with. They take all those cards and they put those cards into their hand with the 7 cards that were just dealt to them. This makes a really big hand, a supersized hand. And what players need to do then is try and build the single best widget that they can from this supersized hand. During the final round, you can't use switch cards. They're worthless in the final round. And you can't use the backer's card. Blank cards, however, can be used. So if they're blank still, you can write a new word on them. You can do them just like any other blank card. However, if somebody has already used that blank card in this game to write a word on it, you can't change the word. Awarding points in the final round is very similar to awarding points in any of the other rounds. Once players have finished building their final widget, the decider gets to pick who starts, who reads, who explains. The big difference between this round and all the other rounds is that each player now has 2 points or tokens to award to the widget that they think's best. You still can't give the point to yourself, but you can split the points. You can give a 1 point to one player and 1 point to another if you want to, or 2 points to a single player. Once all the points are awarded, the players count up their points, and the player who has the most points wins the game. If there's a tie, then the last player with the decider card gets to break the tie, even if that means giving the win to themselves. And that's it. Thanks for watching this widget tutorial. If you have any questions or you need a printable version of the rules, please check out the widget website at www.sourcesandmethodsgames.com.